Dawn crept through the narrow hospital window in thin gray lines, barely softening the harsh white lights above the delivery bed. Machines beeped in restless rhythms. Nurses moved with controlled urgency, and the air smelled sharply of antiseptic and fear. The room was alive with tension, yet unbearably quiet, as if everyone was holding their breath for something to break. She had been in labor for hours, long, punishing hours that blurred pain into something almost unreal. Her fingers clawed at the sheets, her body shaking with exhaustion, sweat soaking her hair. Each contraction tore through her, relentless and unforgiving. She searched for her husband's hand, for his voice, for anything familiar to anchor her. He stood a few steps away, eyes fixed on his phone, answering emails between contractions, his presence more symbolic than real. When the first baby cried, a sharp, fragile sound cut through the room. Then the second, then the third. 3 lives announced themselves to the world, small and trembling, wrapped quickly in blankets. Nurses smiled, voices soft with awe, murmuring about miracles and blessings. This was the moment they always talked about, the one that changed everything. They looked to the father, expecting tears, laughter, some crack in his composure. But his face remained cold, distant, as if he were watching someone else's story unfold. No smile, no relief, only calculation. Minutes later, while blood still stained the sheets and her body trembled uncontrollably, he stepped closer, not to kiss her forehead, not to thank her. He placed a thin folder on the edge of the bed, divorce papers. His voice was calm, almost bored, as he explained it was inevitable. That children, especially 3, complicated his future, his image, his plans. This was cleaner, better, he said, for everyone. She stared at the papers in disbelief, clutching one newborn against her chest. Her hands shook as she signed, tears finally spilling, not loud, not dramatic, just empty. In that moment, holding her child, she understood the truth with brutal clarity. Love had never been part of the contract. Before the delivery room, before the papers and the blood and the silence, there had been a slow unraveling she didn't recognize as cruelty at the time. In the beginning, he had been attentive, polished, almost charming in the way powerful men often are. He spoke about partnership, about building a future together. She mistook his intensity for devotion. Control entered quietly. He suggested she didn't need to finish her studies. Why exhaust herself when he could provide everything? When friends called, he reminded her how busy his schedule was, how inconvenient social obligations had become. Invitations stopped coming. Phone calls went unanswered. Without realizing it, her world shrank to the size of him. Publicly, she was the perfect CEO's wife, silent at events, smiling on cue, standing half a step behind him in photographs. He corrected her gently at first, how to dress, when to speak, what opinions to keep private. Eventually, correction turned into expectation. Her compliance became routine, her voice unnecessary. Pregnancy exposed a truth he'd hidden so well. The first confirmation annoyed him. It disrupted his carefully ordered life. When doctors announced it was triplets, his irritation curdled into anger. He accused her of recklessness, as if her body had betrayed him on purpose. From that moment on, distance replaced pretense. He slept elsewhere. Meetings became excuses. Conversations turned transactional. Still, she stayed. She told herself marriage required sacrifice. That love was proven through patience. That enduring discomfort was strength, not surrender. She believed if she tried harder, smiled more, asked less, things would improve. They never did. The divorce had not been born in the delivery room. It had been drafted in boardrooms, rehearsed in his mind, finalized long before she felt the first contraction. By the time he handed her the papers, the decision was already old. She was only the last to know. She was discharged from the hospital earlier than recommended. The decision wrapped in polite language about recovery at home, but driven by something uglier. The CEO didn't want questions. He didn't want whispers. A wife abandoned after childbirth was bad for optics. A quiet exit solved that. Nurses avoided her eyes as they wheeled her out. 3 newborns bundled beside her, their futures suddenly as uncertain as her own. By the time she reached the mansion, security was waiting. Access denied. Her name had been removed from the system. Her phone buzzed with bank notifications. Accounts frozen, cards declined, privileges revoked with ruthless efficiency. The life she had built vanished in hours, as if she had never existed there at all. She ended up in a small apartment on the edge of the city, found through an old acquaintance who owed her a favor. The furniture was borrowed, mismatched, and unstable. A narrow couch became a bed. A folding table held bottles and diapers. It wasn't home, but it was shelter. The nights were the hardest. 3 babies cried in overlapping rhythms, and she moved between them on aching legs, stitches burning, body still healing from trauma it hadn't processed. Sleep came in fragments, minutes stolen between feedings. Fear sat heavy in her chest. What if she failed them? What if love wasn't enough? Outside, headlines told a different story. Anonymous sources painted her as greedy, ungrateful, a woman who tried to trap a powerful man with children. She didn't respond. She didn't defend herself. Energy was a luxury she no longer had. She cried only when the apartment finally went quiet, when 3 tiny chests rose and fell in unison. Then she wiped her face, straightened her back, and stood again. Grief had no space here. Survival did. Halfway across the world, in a city built on glass towers and guarded silence, a man known only in whispers collapsed in his private residence. The news barely reached the public before it was buried under controlled statements and carefully chosen words. He was a tycoon whose influence stretched far beyond balance sheets, into governments, markets, and decisions never recorded on paper. His death was sudden, inconvenient, and immediately suspicious. What shocked his inner circle wasn't how he died, but what he left behind. A sealed will, open in the presence of lawyers who had served him for decades, named a single heir, not a business partner, not a distant cousin, a woman whose name none of them recognized, a woman living quietly, forgotten by the world, raising 3 newborns in a cramped apartment. Finding her took weeks. Private investigators traced old hospital records, sealed birth documents, and fragments of the past deliberately erased. When the knock finally came at her door, she almost didn't answer. Exhaustion had taught her to distrust unexpected visitors. The man introduced himself carefully, respectfully. He spoke of an inheritance, of questions about her past. She nearly closed the door in his face, convinced it was a scam designed to prey on desperation. Then he told her the truth. Her biological father had built an empire in shadows. He had hidden her existence to protect her from rivals, enemies, and the violence that followed power. Her mother had agreed to disappear, raising her without wealth, without answers, believing anonymity was safer than inheritance. Proof followed words. DNA tests conducted in sterile labs, documents stamped and notarized, photographs of a man whose eyes mirrored her own. Every result confirmed what her heart resisted. The inheritance was staggering. Multinational corporations, private holdings, political leverage, wealth layered across generations. Power beyond imagination. She sat on the floor after the investigator left, 1 baby asleep on her chest, 2 in the next room. Laughter and cries filtered through the thin walls as reality closed in. It felt cruel, unreal, like fate had waited until she was broken to reveal she had never been powerless at all. And slowly, undeniably, the truth settled. This was real. The lawyers arrived first. Sharp suits, sharper minds, voices full of urgency. They spoke of press conferences, public statements, and reclaiming her narrative. They told her the world owed her an explanation, that humiliation could be rewritten as triumph if she acted quickly and loudly enough. Every insult could be corrected. Every lie could be buried under truth. She listened, then she declined. Anonymity, she decided, was not weakness. It was control. She had spent years being watched, shaped, judged. Now, for the first time, she chose silence on her own terms. No interviews, no public appearances, no spectacle. Her children deserved peace before headlines. Instead, she learned. Quietly, methodically, she stepped into a world she had been kept from. Financial briefings replaced gossip. Legal frameworks replaced apologies. She studied late at night after feedings, documents spread across the kitchen table, while bottles warmed beside her. During the day, she attended discreet meetings, cameras banned, names withheld. She asked questions others assumed she wouldn't understand, and remembered everything. Motherhood didn't slow her. It sharpened her. She balanced board discussions with midnight cries, corporate strategies with lullabies. Exhaustion became familiar, but so did clarity. Every decision carried weight now, not for ego or status, but for 3 small lives depending on her judgment. Power, she discovered, didn't have to be loud. It didn't demand cruelty. It didn't require vengeance. Where anger once burned, resolve settled in. She had no interest in destroying the man who discarded her. Revenge was reactive, and she was done reacting. What she wanted was protection. Of her children, of her future, of the truth that had been denied to her for so long. This was no longer about proving anything. It was about building something that could not be taken away. From the outside, his empire looked stronger than ever. Headlines praised aggressive expansion, bold acquisitions, record-breaking announcements delivered with his familiar confidence. He stood on glossy stages, smiling for cameras, speaking of vision and dominance. The world saw momentum. He saw invincibility. Inside the boardroom, the pace was reckless. He pushed for growth without caution, signing deals faster than teams could evaluate them. Risk to him was proof of strength. Anyone who hesitated was dismissed as weak, replaceable. He had built his success on certainty, and doubt felt like betrayal. His remarriage followed the same logic. The woman at his side was flawless on paper, well-connected, elegant, strategically valuable. Love was irrelevant. Appearances mattered more. The wedding generated headlines that drowned out older rumors, just as he intended. Then the cracks began to show. A key supplier terminated contracts without warning. Another quietly sold at stake. Shipping delays piled up, timelines shattered, and explanations grew thin. Investors called with questions that turned into demands. Stock prices wavered, then slipped. He blamed incompetence. He blamed bad luck. He blamed everyone but himself. At night, certainty eroded. Reports contradicted reassurances. Numbers refused to align. Paranoia crept in where confidence once ruled. He ordered investigations, searching for rivals bold enough to challenge him. Names were floated. None felt right. What never crossed his mind was the woman he had erased. To him, she remained fragile, broken, dependent. Exactly where he had left her. The idea that she could exist in the same world of power, let alone influence it, seemed absurd. His arrogance protected him from suspicion, even as it blinded him to the truth. By the time he realized something was fundamentally wrong, control was already slipping through his fingers. The kingdom he built on pride was beginning to collapse. Quietly, from within, the summit unfolded in a cathedral of glass and steel, filled with low voices, tailored suits, and the quiet hum of power exchanging hands. He arrived late, irritation already tight in his jaw, mind consumed with numbers that refused to behave. As he scanned the room for allies and threats, his gaze passed over her, without recognition. She stood near the front, calm and self-possessed, dressed with understated authority. There was nothing fragile about her now, no hesitation, no need to be seen. When she turned slightly, he frowned, sensing something familiar but unplaceable. Then the announcement came, smooth and formal, echoing through the hall. Her name, Chairwoman. The word landed like a blow to his chest. Applause rose as she stepped forward. Only then did he see them. 3 children seated nearby, identical in posture if not in face, observant and composed beyond their years. His stomach tightened. They were healthy, confident, untouched by the chaos he'd expected to follow his departure. The meeting that followed was brief, procedural, merciless. Contracts shifted. Decisions were confirmed. His objections carried no weight. When it ended, he intercepted her in a quiet corridor away from witnesses. Shock cracked into desperation. He apologized, clumsy, breathless words spilling out. He blamed pressure, ambition, fear. He said he'd made a mistake. He spoke of family, of repairing what had been broken, of the children who deserved both parents. She listened without interruption. Then, softly, she reminded him of the delivery room, the lights, the blood, the papers placed on her bed while she held their child. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't accuse. She simply described the truth he had chosen to forget. Access she told him, was not a right. It was earned. She denied him not out of bitterness, but understanding. Clarity had replaced hope. She turned away, composed, unshaken, leaving him standing alone in the silence he had created. Justice didn't need to be loud. It only needed to be final. She chose to build quietly, deliberately, far from applause. The first foundations she established weren't about profit or expansion, but protection. Safe housing for women discharged from hospitals with nowhere to go, legal aid for mothers abandoned when love turned conditional, counseling for those taught to mistake endurance for devotion. She never framed herself as a savior. She understood survival intimately, and that understanding shaped every decision she made. At home, truth ruled gently. She raised her children without lies, but also without poison. They knew they were wanted. They knew they were enough. Questions were answered with care, never resentment. Their world was stable, warm, filled with routines and laughter instead of fear. Safety became normal, not something to be earned. The empire grew under her name alone, not through dominance, but consistency. Partners trusted her word. Employees stayed. Influence followed integrity. His name faded from conversations that once revolved around him, replaced by hers. Spoken with respect, sometimes awe, never controversy. From a distance, he watched. Invitations dwindled. Calls slowed. His presence became optional, then forgettable. The world adjusted without ceremony. Power, he learned too late, doesn't announce when it leaves. The final image wasn't boardrooms or headlines. It was a late afternoon filled with sunlight and noise. 3 children running across a garden, laughter spilling freely, unguarded and real. She watched from a bench, peace settling deep in her chest. Not the absence of pain, but the certainty that it no longer ruled her. That was the victory. Not destruction. Not revenge. Peace.